So when All Might is moments from death, that's when we finally get a bit of Toshinori's backstory? Better late than never. What's up, it's Truth Hero, and welcome back to another My Hero Academia chapter review. So Boku no Hero Academia chapter 398 of the manga. Let's talk about All Might, Toshinori's backstory and his history with Shimura Nana, and of course, All Might's vestige inside One for All getting closer and feeling the real thing. You know what that means? I know you know that you know what it means, okay? Just accept All Might's fate. Let's dive in. The chapter opens with Toshinori asking to be Nana's student and for her to mentor him, and him being very persistent, just like Deku was with All Might. This isn't new, obviously. As we saw in the last chapter, the whole point of Toshinori's backstory with Shimura Nana is to show just how much of a parallel there is between All Might and Deku. The apple really doesn't fall far from the tree. But before we can expand upon that, let's talk about All Might's new ride, the Batmobile, the All Might plus Ultramobile, and a rocket launcher. All Might in his new ride pursues All for One and launches a projectile at him, which actually sheds its layers, revealing a needle-like payload, and delivers that package right into All for One's chest. So just when you thought Toshinori Stark was all out of tricks, he brings even more toys to the battlefield in his mission to stall the Demon Lord. And the best part about this is, he's not even done in this chapter. All Might then zips towards All for One, stabbing the projectile into All for One's chest and activating it, causing an acidic substance to further damage All for One and infiltrate his body. I gotta say, the combination of attacks with these support items from All Might that he is dishing out against All for One have been flawless. He needs to keep this up. Then again, if you can't rely on quirks to fight villains in this universe, you gotta come up with some strategy, and here, All Might he's quite the artist. And of course, if we're talking about dishing it out, who doesn't love a little trash talk here? All Might says, "You called me garbage, All for One. Now look who's decaying and dissolving." I really do think that All Might has a chance against All for One if he keeps this pressure up, if he can maintain these combinations of attacks with the support items and continue to get into All for One's head and break him down psychologically. He's going to keep getting younger, and he's going to reach a point of no return where he really can't compete with All Might. So I think he has a real shot here. We then cut back to Toshinori asking Nana to take him under her wing, and she says she can't since he is ultimately quirkless, and in the end, he's only going to be able to defend a 3-meter area. We then get one of the biggest revelations about All Might in the series, and it's just kind of thrown in here. Toshinori reveals that his family was killed. And although Nana's family wasn't killed, she had to abandon them to protect them when she became a hero. So it's a metaphysical death to her. Now, she assumes that Toshinori is just another punk kid out for revenge, but when Toshinori explains that that's not it, he's just tired of the crime and the sadness and the hatred and wants to do something to help people, she's kind of taken back by this. Keep in mind that it wasn't too long ago that Nana made this decision, and we know that she suffered a lot in that decision to ultimately give up her family to protect them. She can never see them again unless she put them in danger. So for her to encounter a boy, and of course she had a son too, a boy that does not have a quirk and has no chance of fighting villains realistically, but wants to do so not for revenge, not for fame, not for glory, but for pure reasons, I mean, this must melt her heart. This must be amazing for her. I'm thinking Toshinori is the one that taught her how to smile. Perhaps the most astonishing thing here is when Toshinori tells Nana that he wants to be a symbol of peace. This, in fact, could be the first time the man who would go on to become All Might, and the symbol of peace, spoke those words. Nana, still being a little cynical, says, "Look, even if you repair and rebuild, people will still be afraid to move on and live." And this begs a very fundamental question. Does being good matter if the world will eventually just fall back into evil? Should we even try to be heroic? Does All Might's career and every heroic thing that he's ever done even matter right now? Now that All For One is still alive after 100 years, and you have Shigaraki, someone arguably worse than All For One in every aspect, does everything that All Might fought for mean anything anymore? It reminds me of the scene from The Incredibles where Mr. Incredible is just, he's joking, but he's lamenting like, oh, you're constantly fighting bad guys, and he just wants a moment of peace. He just wants a day, maybe two, where there are no bad guys popping up.
No matter how many times you save the world, it always manages to get back in jeopardy again. I mean, sometimes I just want it to stay saved, for a little bit. I feel like the maid. I just cleaned up this mess. Can we keep it clean for 10 minutes?
Comment down below. Let's get a little philosophical. Do we aspire to good when we know evil will always rear its ugly head? I think we ultimately should try to, because if we don't, then we descend into hell, chaos, and the destruction of everything. But dang, it has gotta be frustrating for the heroes in All Might to see that all the work they've ever done throughout their entire careers in helping people in the littlest gesture to fighting the biggest villains, seeing the state of the world in Japan right now, it's like none of that even mattered. Sure, All Might probably has some regrets about not finishing off All For One, but it's gotta be hard watching Shigaraki rise up and know that it's really out of your hands now. And I'm not excusing anyone or making any excuses for the heroes, because ultimately there are UA high school students who are more determined, and perhaps it's their youth and innocence and they think they can really try and be good, but it's no wonder that so many pro heroes quit. After seeing the state of Japan and perhaps the world, they just said, we're done. And look, I'd be scared of Shigaraki too, but even if you were a hero that had a long storied career, you must feel a bit apathetic at the end. Like, no matter what you did, no matter how many All For Ones and Shigarakis and Demon Lords of that era you took down, it was just a constant struggle against the tide, keeping these evil villains at bay. Luckily, the young Toshinori is not as cynical and says, a guy without a quirk that wants to protect his own, that's every guy and every person without a quirk that just wants to protect their family. I'm not some exception to the rule, I am the rule. And that's why Toshinori, who goes on to become All Might, is the perfect representative for the masses of people that feel they don't have a fighting chance. He is the perfect representative to be the Heiwa no Shocho, the symbol of peace. And if you think about it, before the glowing baby came along and people had quirks, it's basically our society. I don't know about you, but I don't have any superpowers, and I'd like to protect my friends and family, and I'm sure you would as well. So, in a sense, we're all the guy or gal waving a pipe around defending a 3-meter area, and we could all use an All Might. The best part about this is, it's an exact parallel to Deku asking All Might if he can become a hero. He doesn't want fame or glory or revenge. He just wants to help people. Which is why the next scene is brilliant. All Might and All For One crash into Tatooine Station, and All Might has damage to his lungs. His suit is breaking down. And it's on the same building where Deku asked him if he could become a hero. Talk about the callback to all callbacks. But what do you think, or who do you think motivates All Might to get up in this dire situation? Well, but of course, it's the scene where Deku charges in heroically to save Bakugo from the sludge villain, and also All Might recalling what the hero killer Stain said to him about being a true hero. As a side note to All Might's memories here, I hope we see the real hero killer Stain participate in this fight, because we could have one of the most outrageous, unlikely team-ups in the entire series. All Might being a hero, a true hero for the last time, and Stain, the hero killer, being a hero for the first time. No, Stain being the villain killer for the first time. All For One shows up and he's having a rough time. He's used some quirks to rid his body of the acid, but All Might notices he's even younger than before, and we knew that he was getting younger and it's hard to sustain his body when All Might is fighting him, but now that All Might did some serious damage, it looks like it's mounting up, it's exponential. So All Might's mission to stall All For One is renewed with this hope that if he does enough damage quickly, it can rewind All For One even faster. All Might then summons the last of his strength and all his remaining support items, one being the Doc Ock tentacles, nice reference to Spider-Man there, because Horikoshi can't go 3 chapters without doing that. But All Might stands up, equips his body with all these items, and looks at All For One and says, "Let's dance. I'm gonna do my very best to help people. And we're gonna win." The last thing we see is the Vestige of All Might inside the One For All quirk, feeling the presence of the real All Might, and All Might and Deku suddenly linked through One For All. So let's discuss this. I think we all know what this means. It's pretty clear that All Might is dying as he becomes weaker and weaker and his breath is labored. Of course, the vestige inside the One For All quirk is becoming realer and realer and stronger, and that connection between All Might and Deku is growing stronger as well because All Might is closer to being absorbed into the quirk, or at least his essence. We still don't have a huge explanation on how that works, but it's quite sure to say that All Might is dying here. We can talk about All Might's legacy when he finally passes. For now, I just want to leave it at, changing the events in the timeline and seeing the photograph fade in and out, okay? I think what's more interesting here is that while Deku will be eventually facing Shigaraki in the final battle of this series, All Might's going to be with Deku not in any physical form, but in spirit within the One For All quirk. And we're going to see Deku do one final Detroit, America, Tokyo, Japan smash with all of the vestiges and All Might right at his side, wrapping the series up like a nice little bow in a reference to the first movie when he did the same thing with All Might side by side. I think that's going to be incredible, and this could happen sooner than we think, or at least All Might could be talking to Deku about how to use his quirk more effectively sooner than we think, because All Might really is in dire straits right now. The last thing I want to discuss is a little, maybe unknown problem to this fight. Yes, I want to see Stain show up and somehow lick All For One's blood and paralyze him, and then All Might can deliver the final blow and those two can team up, and then maybe Deku shows up and it's too late and he confronts Stain, and then All Might is in the One For All world and calms him down. It's an emotional moment. That's great, but there's one thing to this battle that has been clear from the very beginning, at least with All Might trying to stall All For One. He got inside his head. He used psychological manipulation, made him angry, made him emotional, and All For One has not been performing like we know All For One to perform. I mean, he is rewinding too, so cut him a little slack, but that's a good strategy. It's also the strategy the heroes have used against Shigaraki, bringing up his past. What happens when when All Might defeats All For One and he's now successfully rewound into nothing? Shigaraki no longer has his master in his ear, controlling and influencing his thoughts and sort of invading that personal space, tearing his head in half. Keep in mind that, yes, it's good to stall All For One physically so he doesn't reunite with Shigaraki, but also, are we giving Shigaraki a little bit of an advantage here because he's not tormented anymore with All For One in his head? Something to think about. Anyway, that's my niche theory of the day, but let me know down below in the comments. How badly do you want to see Stain show up to this fight? It's not a question of do you, it's how badly do you want to see Stain team up with All Might? And do you think All Might will be successful, with Stain perhaps, in rewinding All For One and stalling him out? And if so, what does this mean for his life and Deku? Let me know your thoughts down below. As always guys, thanks for watching these My Hero Academia videos and these chapter reviews. If you like My Hero Academia content, consider enrolling at UA today by subscribing. And until next time, it is hot in Tennessee, plus ultra.